Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center for today's Mission Management Team briefing for the STS-132 flight. For the briefing, we have Leroy Kane, who is the chairman of the Mission Management Team and also the Deputy Program Manager for the Space Shuttle program. So we'll open up with comments from Leroy and then take questions. Leroy?
Okay, thank you, Kylie. Well, it's really great to be back in orbit. Atlantis and the Atlantis crew are doing very well today. We had just a flawless launch and ascent yesterday from the Kennedy Space Center, and the crew got on orbit and proceeded into their Flight Day 1 activities. The orbiter has been performing exceptionally well, and the crew today was into their normal Flight Day 2 activities, to include the inspection of our thermal protection system and their normal preparation for rendezvous and docking with the International Space Station tomorrow. So all of that is ongoing, and we're looking forward to being back at Space Station tomorrow. In the mission management team today, we talked about a couple of items. One of the items has to do with the inspection system that we use to look at, in this case, Atlantis's thermal protection system. This is the part of the system that we attach to the orbiter robot arm. The orbiter boom system. On the end of that boom extension, there is a sensor package, a suite of sensors actually. There's a camera, a digital camera, as well as a laser imaging system. And the laser imaging system has a pan tilt system that's used so that we can move it around and scan the various areas that we're looking at. The issue is with that pan tilt system, specifically the tilt. It appears that there is a cable that is out of configuration in a way such that it is causing some interference when we try to tilt that unit. And so the team worked through this problem this morning as the crew got into the inspection procedures, and they very quickly determined that, without going outside, there wasn't going to be any way to rectify this problem. And so they downloaded to using the digital camera to do the inspections, and that is a procedure that the crew is trained to do, and it's a published procedure. It's part of the flight rules that we've documented before the mission, so that in the event we have a problem with the laser imaging system, we just go ahead and do the scans using the digital camera system. Part of as a result of that, part of the impact will be that we were not able to get the port wing completely scanned today. And so while we normally like to get all of the starboard wing, the nose cap, and the port wing areas where the reinforced carbon-carbon is as part of this Flight Day 2 inspection, we normally try to get that all done. We weren't able to complete that. So we will complete the scans and complete the inspection of the port wing once we get docked to the International Space Station, and that'll be sometime in the coming days. And so the team is off working the forward plan for exactly which systems we want to use to complete that inspection, and where it'll fit best into the timeline. And we don't have any issues with that. It'll just be a timeline impact at this point. The other topic that we talked a little bit about is, and I think you may have heard, that the space station for the last couple of days has been working an issue with debris. As we always do, we have debris in low Earth orbit that we have to be concerned with, and that sometimes we have to do maneuvers. And in this case, the space station program has been looking at an object that they were alerted to. And so they've got a plan to do a debris avoidance maneuver tonight. The time of closest approach is actually would be after Atlantis shows up tomorrow and after we dock, sometime in the hour and a half after we dock would be the time of closest approach if they should not do any kind of debris avoidance maneuver. So they've elected to go ahead and do a maneuver and proactively get us out of the situation where we might be at some risk of having an object come closer to us than what we would like. So they have not made a final decision to do the maneuver. They have all the plans in place. to execute the maneuver if they decide they need it. They'll take a little bit more time and get some more vectors and a little bit more data on the time of closest approach and the exact predictions for the missed distance, and then they'll compare that to their flight rules and they'll make a final decision. And if they should do the maneuver, it will be tonight. It'll be sometime between 8 and 9 p.m. Central Time if they decide to execute the maneuver. So that's not an impact for us as far as the shuttle is concerned. Whatever the resulting state vectors are between the shuttle and station, we'll determine that later tonight and in the morning, as we do as part of our ongoing process, part of the ongoing tracking process for both vehicles as we prepare for the rendezvous and docking tomorrow. So really not an issue, but just a topic of discussion and more for awareness for us on the shuttle side. So other than those two items, as I said, the orbiter is performing exceedingly well. We know from some of our very preliminary assessment of the other flight elements, to include the tank and the solid rocket boosters and the shuttle main engines, the space shuttle main engines. We know that the performance of all the propulsion elements looks very good, and so we'll obviously look more at that as we go through the mission and in post-flight. But preliminarily, it looks like the performance overall of the entire STS vehicle was very, very good. So we're, again, glad to be here on orbit and looking forward to getting docked with Space Station tomorrow and getting on with the work of this mission. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Leroy. We'll start with questions here at the Johnson Space Center. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mark Carreau for Aviation Week. I want to sort of understand, I think I do, what you said about forward inspection of the left wing. Will you actually use the boom sensor system after they've docked to look at the wing, or some other technique?
We won't use the boom sensor system. There are several options to include that, but what we really, in this case, can do, since it's the port wing, is we can do the inspection and complete it with by simply using the shuttle arm, the SRMS shuttle robotic maneuvering system, and the end effector camera that is already on the shuttle arm. We know from previous experience and from looking at these particular scenarios before, that we can get adequate scans and imagery of that entire portion of the port wing, since it's on the same side as the shuttle robotic arm, just using that arm and the end effector camera. So it's really a good bit simpler in terms of logistically being able to do the inspection. So that's one of the options. It's probably the premier or the leading option that we'll be looking at going forward.
And I had a second question regarding the object. It seems like there's been a lot of, you've used a lot of time to sort of assess this object and its motion and the proximity. And I wonder if you could sort of explain, yeah, I'm not trying to say you didn't decide fast enough. I'm just trying to sort of explain why it takes this long in this case to really make a decision as to whether you need to maneuver or not.
Well, in my experience, every debris avoidance case is a little bit different. These, in some cases, these are objects that spend a good bit of their time in low Earth orbit. That is to say, they're also in circular or more or less circular orbits. In other cases, they're highly elliptical or somewhat or mostly elliptical. You know, there's a wide range of scenarios, and so the tracking and the consistency of the tracking of the objects, when you begin to try to compare the state vectors or the position in space between the objects of concern, in this case, this piece of debris being one of the objects, and the space station being the other object, when you start to compare their relative positions in space, and when and if they'll come in contact, and how big the missed distance will be, and that kind of thing. There are perturbations to that. Those perturbations also vary widely as a function of the geometry of the object, the mass of the object, and what kind of orbit it's in. So there are no two debris avoidance cases that really are very much alike, except that we track the objects, we track them for as long as we can and get as much data as we can and make a decision as late as we can safely as to whether or not we need to maneuver out of the way or not. And I say we track the objects. We, NASA, don't track the objects. We are made aware of objects as they are tracked by other entities. So that's kind of how the process works. In this case, there are enough variables with this object, apparently, that make it a little bit more difficult to make a decision sooner than later. And it's also possible that since it's not easy to maneuver the space station, it's not easy in terms of being able to make the decision because of what it costs you to do it, potentially. You want to take as much time as you can, and you want to make sure that you really need to maneuver before you do. So there are a lot of factors, Mark, and I couldn't say for sure in this case which one of those factors would be driving it any more than the other.
Any question?
Philip Sloss with NASAspaceflight.com. First question is, what's your decision time for the debris avoidance maneuver tonight?
The decision time is really, in this case, since the shuttle is coming to station, we don't want to perturb the rendezvous profile any more than is necessary. So we have what's called an NH burn. That's a big burn, big in terms of the importance of it relative to the success of the rendezvous. And that burn right now is scheduled for about 4 o'clock in the morning local time tomorrow. Our flight rules say that we want to, if necessary, station should do a maneuver no later than 8 hours prior to that burn. That 8 hours is based on the amount of time it takes for the flight dynamics officers to track out any differences or changes in the state vector between the shuttle and the space station so that we can successfully set up the maneuvers and the burns that are required for us to catch up to station and rendezvous the way that we intend to do. So if you back up that time frame, that gets you to about 8 p.m. Local time tonight. However, that's just the time to actually execute the burn. In order for station to execute a burn, there's a number of configuration changes that they need to make. Things like feathering the solar arrays and different systems configurations that they'll modify in preparation for doing a burn. So if they're going to do a burn no later than 8 p.m. tonight, they really need to make a decision about 2 or 3 hours before that, or about 2 revs, if you will, before that. So decision time for the burn, last decision time, is really about 5 p.m. Tonight. So in less than a couple hours here, we'll know whether or not they're going to do the maneuver.
Thanks. I actually answered one of my rendezvous questions for tomorrow, was whether you're doing an NH and a NC4. On the again on the possible conjunction, how has the categorization of this object? Is it? I mean, I've heard it classified as yellow or red in some cases. Is that where you are right now? Is there any trend, getting farther away from your box, getting worse, better?
I would say, based on the latest information that I have as of a couple hours ago, it's trending in the direction of goodness. When I was first made aware of this and we first started talking about it before we launched on Friday, on Thursday evening, we were in the yellow to red region in terms of the missed distance and the criteria that we use in the flight rules to be able to determine if we have to do a maneuver or not. Since that time, apparently we've moved more in the yellow to green range. I think if you had to say today, based on where we are, I believe that station alone, not to include the plan for the shuttle to come and dock, if we weren't coming to dock, I think they would be closer to being green. That is to say, the missed distance would be great enough. But we changed the vector and the position and the orientation and the miss distance just by virtue of the physical act of docking with the space station. And in so doing, it moves us into the yellow region, I believe. So it's close enough that it's somewhere in the yellow moving toward green. And as I said, they'll make a decision based on all of the data that's available within a couple of hours.
Any more questions here?
I just had, I apologize, I just got here a little while ago, so I missed the status briefing, but on the OBSS issue with the tilt unit, is the cabling, is it an issue with the cabling, or is it an issue where the cabling is preventing the tilt unit from working correctly, or can you categorize it either way?
Let me see. The cable has a function in terms of power and data. That's not the issue. The issue is the cable somehow got in the wrong configuration where it is causing the unit to bind and physically not allowing it to tilt further up than until where it hits this cable. It's not, the cable is in a position it's not supposed to be in. And it's not allowing the unit to tilt up in the up direction. We can tilt full down, but we can't tilt up past a certain angle. And it's because this cable is binding. So it's basically in a position it's not supposed to be in and wasn't intended to be in terms of the function of the unit.
Is that it for now? Okay, we'll take some questions from the folks on the line. First up is Robert Perlman, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Okay, just two quick, Robert Perlman with complex.The with just two status questions. If you know the status of SRB recovery and also the status of the pad after launch, if it incurred any damage. Thanks.
Let's see, I don't have a launch pad status, which is actually a good thing, because if we had had any significant damage, I would be able to tell you that, because I would have been alerted to that. So I would say so far, no news on the pad is good news, and of course in a couple of days we'll have some details on the launch pad. As far as the SRB and recovery, everything is gone nominal so far where the ships are concerned, and in terms of having the boosters in tow. The plan is to do slip operations on Monday and open assessment for the solid rocket boosters on Tuesday.
Okay, next on the line is Marcia Dunn, please.
Yes, hi. If you determine that a station maneuver is needed, would that be done by Russian flight controllers or the crew or some combination?
I'm not sure, Marcia. The station ops team would handle that between here in Houston and the Houston support group in Moscow and the Russian controllers. As you may know, in this case, the station maneuver will be done using the thrusters that are on the Progress module. So I imagine, as in the case with most of the station operations, it'll be a joint effort.
And I'm wondering if, have you ever had to steer the station out of the way once the shuttle's been launched? I know that I think a year and a half ago, one such maneuver was called off, but I can't recall ever having to move the station like this with a shuttle on the way.
My memory is about the same as yours, I would say, in that I know we've discussed the maneuvers before, after launch and before docking. I don't recall that we've ever actually executed one, but I have to go back and look, Marcia, I just don't remember.
And lastly, any more news on the number of pieces of debris seen coming off the tank during liftoff? I think we heard about a couple yesterday.
And I don't have any updates from that. We're a little bit early, and I do know that from the imagery that we saw from the ascent video, the external tank performance looked very, very good, and as did the other propulsion elements. But we did see a few debris items, and then we saw a little bit of places where we lost some foam in the external tank video imagery, but that's all very preliminary. So I don't have an update from what you heard yesterday, Marcia, but we'll have it in a couple of days probably.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, next on the line is Todd Halverson.
Thanks. Todd Halverson of Florida Today. Leroy, I was wondering, Mike Serafin didn't have any information on the shape, size, or origin of this piece of debris, and I just wanted to check and see whether you had any data on that.
No, I don't. I don't have details on the object.
Okay. And I assume, but I just want to confirm that once a decision is made, would that be voiced up to the crew before they go to bed?
Well, if the crew is still up, yeah, we'll tell them what we're doing, obviously. The station crew certainly will know, but the shuttle crew, it's possible that they'll be in their pre-sleep period, so the team may or may not call it up to them. In any case, before they start their rendezvous operations in the morning, they'll know whether or not station did a maneuver. It really is transparent to the shuttle crew. They're going to perform the burns and the maneuvers per the procedures and per the advisory data that they get uplinked from the mission control here in Houston. So it really will be situational awareness for them, not something they necessarily need to be aware of. It's not going to change anything they do. It'll change what happens on the ground in terms of the tracking and building the advisory data for the burns and the maneuvers. But we'll tell them if they're not already sleeping.
Yeah, I guess these next two are for Kylie. If the crew is asleep, will your commentator fill us in on a decision when it's made?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay, and then I was just curious, if they decide to do a maneuver, I'm assuming that would change the sighting opportunities that you have listed on your website for various passes over billions of cities in the U.S. and elsewhere. And I'm wondering if that is the case, how soon those sighting opportunities would be updated after a maneuver.
We'll have to take a look at that. With the maneuver about 8 p.m. Central Time, that's about around the time a lot of the sightings were this evening for the U.S. cities, if I remember correctly, but we'll look at that and see if that can be updated.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the rest of the mission too. There are many passes, I think about 8 down here at the Cape, and I know people are going to want to go outside and watch if they can. So we'll be looking for an update anyway. Thanks. That's the last from me.
Okay, next on the line is Bill Harwood.
Yeah, hi, Bill Harwood, CBS News. Leroy, on the port wing, if you did it with the end effector camera on the SRMS, I mean, don't you lose something from not using the normal sensor suite? I mean, how is that okay, I guess, is what I'm wondering. Thanks.
Yeah, Bill, this is something that we've looked at going all the way back to return to flight, and we are able to get, with great enough fidelity on the port wing using that system, what we need to see in the scans that we do of the leading edge and the upper surfaces just behind the reinforced carbon-carbon. So there's no issue with that in terms of our minimum criteria and the fidelity of being able to look for our safe entry criteria, if you will. In addition to that, I should say, we are looking at the possibility of getting some higher resolution pictures from some of the cameras on station when we do our normal RPM maneuver. And so that'll just be icing on the cake if we can get, that'll just be some additional data for us. But we are looking at the possibility of being able to do that.
Do you have another question, Bill? Okay, any follow-ups here? No? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go back to Mission Control so we can stay tuned to the news this evening as the crew wraps up the work on board the space shuttle. And you can also keep updated on the web at www.nasa.gov. Thank you.